Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
The WIS 1937 address, The American Scholar, delivered by Ralph Waldo Emerson to the Phi Beta Kappa Society at Harvard, represents a foundational document in the intellectual history of the United States. It functions as both a diagnosis of a derivative cultural condition and a prescription for its remedy, articulated through a powerful, almost prophetic voice. This essay undertakes a rigorous evaluation of the internal claims presented within this seminal work. The analysis will proceed sequentially through the oration's major argumentative sections, dissecting the specific propositions Emerson advances, the conceptual frameworks he erects, and the rhetorical and logical mechanisms he employs to persuade his audience of a new vision for intellectual life in the New World. The focus remains steadfastly on the text itself, treating it as a self-contained intellectual architecture whose premises, connections, and conclusions demand close, critical scrutiny. Section 1, the introductory framing and the problem of intellectual servitude. Emerson commences his address by invoking an ancient fable describing a unified one man who, over time, has been sundered and parcelled out into a society of specialized functions. His central claim in this preamble is that the modern individual exists in a state of profound fragmentation, having become a mere appendage, a fingernail, instead of a complete human being. The scholar, he posits, has devolved into a delegated intellect, man thinking reduced to a bookworm. This initial argument operates as a powerful framing device, establishing the problem that the remainder of the oration aims to solve. The evidence for this claim is primarily observational and metaphorical. He offers a portrait of society where the farmer, a professor, the engineer, and the priest each embody a single, isolated faculty of the original, integrated man. The validity of this claim rests upon the audience's acceptance of his initial fable as a potent allegory for contemporary social alienation. He presents this fragmentation as a self-evident truth, a condition to be felt rather than empirically proven. The internal logic is compelling in its simplicity by accepting the premise of a lost, primordial unity. The listener is primed to accept his prescription for its recovery. The persuasive mechanism is a form of diagnostic rhetoric that creates a sense of deficiency and a corresponding desire for wholeness, which Emerson's scholar is designed to fulfill. He thereby establishes the stakes, or train intellectual renewal as a matter of civilizational and personal salvation. Section 2, the first influence, nature. As primary text having established the problem, Emerson introduces the first of three primary influences on the scholar nature. The core claim of this section is that the natural world serves as the foundational, unmediated text for the developing mind. He posits an intrinsic correspondence between the laws of nature and the laws of human consciousness. The scholar, by observing the circular power of a sunrise or the relentless growth of a plant, comes to understand analogous processes within the self. This argument advances a central tenet of transcendentalism, asserting a direct, epistemological link between the material world and the spiritual or intellectual realm. The methodology proposed for the scholar is one of perceptive observation leading to introspection to know thyself. Emerson claims one must study nature. His evidence for this profound identity between the mind and the material world is delivered through a series of evocative analogies. He speaks of the classification of natural phenomena as a parallel to the mind's own ordering of thoughts. He asserts that the laws of moral nature find their perfect analogue in physical laws, such as the principle of action and reaction. The evaluation of this claim reveals its dependence on the metaphysical assumption. The argument, as a deep internal coherence if one accepts the premise of a universal spirit animating both the observer and the observed. For a purely empirical worldview, the claim appears as a poetic conceit. The mechanism of influence is one of revelation. Nature does not simply provide data, It unveils fundamental truths about the human condition and the structure of thought itself. The scholar's engagement with nature becomes a process of self-recognition, making the external world a mirror for the interior life. Section 3. The second influence, the past, and the tyranny of books. The second major influence Emerson examines is the mind of the past, chiefly embodied in books. The central and most provocative claim in this section is that books are for the scholar's idle times. He argues that the sacredness of a book is contingent upon its alignment with the reader's present insight. When it ceases to illuminate, it becomes a dangerous impediment. This claim functions to subordinate received wisdom to living, original thought. Emerson constructs a specific framework for the proper use of history and literature. He posits that books exist to inspire, to provide facts, and to be subjected to the creative, active reading of man thinking. The danger he identifies is the transformation of the scholar from an active thinker into a passive receptacle, a bookworm who venerates texts to the point of intellectual paralysis. The methodology he critiques is one of scholasticism and blind reverence for tradition, which he views as a particularly acute problem for a young nation still intellectually tethered to Europe. The evidence for his claim is a characterization of the bibliomaniac as a figure who has substituted learning for thinking. He asserts that each age must write its own books, a declaration that functions as a call for intellectual self-sufficiency. Evaluating this claim reveals a sharp, strategic argument. He is advocating for a dynamic relationship with the past, one where history serves the present. The internal logic is consistent with his overarching theme of self-reliance. His prescriptions against the tyranny of books are a necessary step in liberating the American mind to produce its own unique contribution to human knowledge. The paradox, of course, is that Emerson, a man of profound learning, delivers this critique through the very medium of a highly literate, structured oration. Demonstrating his own mastery of the past, he advises his audience to handle with core. Section 4. The third influence, action. As essential vocabulary, Emerson's third core influence on the scholar is action. The fundamental claim here is that direct, lived experience is an indispensable component of intellectual development and expression. He proposes that a life of action, including manual labor, provides the raw material and essential vocabulary for thought. The scholar who remains cloistered and aloof from the world will find his thinking anemic and his language abstract. Life, in this formulation, is the scholar's dictionary. The conceptual framework he presents is one where thought and action exist in a symbiotic, cyclical relationship. Action provides the substance for thought, and thought, in turn, gives meaning and direction to action. The evidence he offers is an appeal to the felt truths of this connection. He argues that the most potent and enduring words are those rooted in material reality, and that the sluggard intellect is invigorated by practical engagement. His examples are illustrative. He celebrates the power of a day of labor to clarify the mind and the necessity of experience to lend authenticity to writing. The mechanism he describes is one of translation. The scholar takes the concrete data of life, the frolic and drudgery, and converts it into the universal principles of thought. An evaluation of this claim shows it to be a democratizing move, a challenge to the elitist conception of the scholar as someone removed from the common currents of life. It validates all forms of human endeavor as sources of wisdom. The internal coherence of this section depends on accepting that abstract ideas gain their vitality and meaning from their connection to tangible reality. Action prevents the scholar's work from becoming a web of formalities, grounding intellectual pursuit in the rich, complex soil of human existence. Section 5. The scholar's duties and the office of self-trust, synthesizing the influences of nature, the past, and action. Emerson proceeds to delineate the specific duties of the American scholar. The primary claim of this section is that the scholar's fundamental responsibility is the exercise of self-trust and the preservation of universal truths in the face of public opinion and ephemeral distractions. The scholar is designated as the world's eye and the world's heart. Tasked with seeing reality clearly and communicating it with courage, this duty requires the scholar to cheer, to raise, and to guide men by showing them facts amidst appearances. The conceptual framework here is that of the scholar as a secular priest or prophet, a guardian of the collective conscience. The methodology for fulfilling this duty is one of unwavering independence. The scholar must be willing to endure poverty, solitude, and public disapproval in service of truth. The office is one of profound moral and intellectual courage. The evidence for the necessity of this role is implicit in his earlier diagnosis of a fragmented and superficial society. The scholar's function is to be the counterforce to the cries of the street and the pressures of the marketplace. An evaluation of this claim highlights its demanding, almost heroic, standard. Emerson is defining the scholar's role in opposition to the prevailing pragmatic and commercial spirit of the age. The internal logic is sound if the scholar is to be the repository of man thinking. Then they must possess the fortitude to resist the fragmenting pressures of society. This section elevates the scholar's vocation from a mere profession to a sacred calling, one dedicated to the long-term intellectual and spiritual health of the nation. The potential critique of this position is its risk of intellectual arrogance, yet Emerson frames it as a solemn responsibility, a service to humanity rather than an assertion of personal superiority. Section 6. The concluding vision of a new American intellect. In his conclusion, Emerson consolidates his arguments into a powerful, prophetic declaration. The central claim is that the era of American intellectual apprenticeship is over and that a new age of individual and national self-reliance is at hand. It asserts that by embracing the principles of engagement with nature, active use of the past, and immersion in action, a new kind of person will emerge, and with them, a new culture. This final argument is a culmination, a peroration that moves from analysis to exhortation. The framework is utopian and aspirational, painting a picture of a nation populated by whole, integrated individuals. The evidence for this coming renaissance is the very spirit he senses in his audience and in the times. He speaks of a growing dissatisfaction with social conformity, and a rising belief in the infinitude of the private man. The mechanism of this transformation is a change in consciousness. He claims that a revolution in thought, beginning with the individual, will inevitably reshape all social institutions. His final, ringing sentences, "We will walk on our own feet, we will work with our own hands, we will speak our own minds," function as a performative utterance, an incantation designed to bring the future he describes into being. An evaluation of this concluding section shows its power resides in its rhetorical force. It is less a logical deduction and more of a cultural manifesto. The claim is unfalsifiable, a statement of faith in the potential of the American experiment. It solidifies the oration's purpose, moving beyond a lecture for scholars to become a foundational myth for a nation in search of its own distinct identity. In conclusion, a meticulous evaluation of the internal claims of the American scholar reveals a work constructed not as a formal philosophical treatise but as a series of interlocking, axiomatic propositions about the nature of thought, selfhood, and culture. Emerson's method is one of assertion and analogy, building a compelling intellectual edifice upon the foundational belief in the divinity and infinitude of the individual. Each section advances a specific, old claims that nature is a direct text for the soul, that books are tools for present inspiration, that action is the vocabulary of thought, and that the scholar's primary duty is heroic self-trust. The coherence of the whole address depends on the acceptance of these transcendentalist premises, while the evidentiary basis for its most profound claims is intuitive rather than empirical. The logical progression from diagnosing a problem to prescribing a detailed, three-part remedy and outlining the duties of its practitioner is masterfully executed. The work's enduring significance emanates from its successful articulation of an ideal. It provided a powerful and poetic charter for intellectual independence. Functioning as a secular scripture, that defined the responsibilities and aspirations of the thinking individual within the context of a new, self-aware republic. Its claims, while products of a specific historical moment, continue to resonate as a timeless call for originality, courage, and the integration of the contemplative and the active life.
We really appreciate you tuning into this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.